Hi, this is Elisa Stewart, and I'm going to be going over what we've learned this week in our Theories of Teaching class as far as the reading of Benedict Carey's How We Learn, also Debunking a Myth, and a research paper on neuroscience for educators. I have to say the hardest part of this project is making a video and getting it uploaded to YouTube. Anyway, the process that we're looking at, I don't know, hopefully I can edit this crap out. Anyway, Benedict Carey wrote a really insightful book on how we learn. He put a lot of research together, a lot of different studies, and put it all together in a nice, tidy book. I read the book about 8 weeks ago the first time. I read it a second time. Both times I got really excited about the book, and I was thinking, holy cow, this would be great. I can use a lot of this stuff for students. What it took from it was that a lot of it is stuff that if I can give kids practical points, I think that they can implement some of this stuff for themselves as far as their studying goes. Next year, I plan on taking the information and working through the chapters with my seniors that are in my advanced biology class as kind of a side note just to help them prepare for college next year and really learn how they can help themselves best. Anyway, Benedict's book goes on talking about, Mr. Carey's book goes on talking about the biology of memory. It starts out at the biology of memory and talks about a man and how he had his hippocampus removed, and it kind of maps out the brain and where things are a little bit in relation to the book, so you have some sort of an idea of what we're looking at. But he looked at a study of a man named Meliasen and the determination that just because a person's short-term memory is stored in the hippocampus doesn't necessarily mean that applies to their physical memory. And it discussed how Meliasen was able to learn to use a walker and learn to do things in a physical manner, but he couldn't remember learning them. So it's very interesting. And then it goes on to, he teaches a little bit about the power of learning and how sometimes we use filters. Losing things, memories are important to the learning process. And basically that chapter helped us to see how these little pieces are kept in there. Then there's a chapter on breaking good habits, and that was taking the tale that we've all been told that we need to sit at a quiet desk in a quiet room to optimize learning. He shares how that's not necessarily the truth, that sometimes a lot of learning can be based on our moods and where we are and what we're doing, and that switching it up actually helps us make more connections to the information. And so he suggests that maybe we move things around as far as where we're at. He also discussed in the fourth chapter spacing out our studying and not just piling it all at one time, and he actually went over some research that shared optimal time frames for learning, such as instead of cramming, if you have a test a week away, instead of cramming it all in one day, spacing it out over that week so that you don't spend as much time, but you space it out. Then he talked about the hidden value of ignorance, was chapter 5, and it discussed giving pre-tests to students to help them kind of key in on facts that they're going to need to pay attention to while you're learning the chapter. It discussed research on that shows that benefits students. Also, a couple big things they talked about: incubation, which is kind of giving your brain a break in the short term and allowing you to break apart some of the things you're functionally fixed on as far as notions that we have. There's also a section on percolation, which is kind of like incubation, but in a much longer time frame. I have taken and used percolation quite a bit throughout the last 2 classes I've taken at Concordia because I really feel I need it. Less procrastination, more percolation. I tend to think about the project that's due at the end of the week and keep it somewhere in the back of my mind so as I'm doing other things I can recall little pieces that I want to include. There's also interleaving, which is just mixing up. The research he used was on people throwing bags playing or throwing. The research he used was students throwing, trying to hit targets, and they discovered that mixing up practice helped, which makes sense because mixing up how we do things in a classroom, I feel really helps kids to attach to it. Sometimes we use readings, sometimes we use a video discussion. I use very little lecture, but labs and things like that to help kids make deeper connections with what they're learning. And he also talks a bit about the discrimination of, the person's discrimination as far as what they come in and what they automatically see and what they absorb based on that. And he talked about a baseball player and how the baseball player can tell what's going to happen with a pitch in the fraction of a second that it is leaving the pitcher's hand, and that it's all through training and just being used to using that. I was really excited about this book. I thought that it was something that I want to really share with students and really help them become better at some of this. But I was a little disappointed when I went to the video or went to the Debunking Myths, and I read through a couple of them, but I decided to look at the Braincraft video from YouTube that talks about 3 specific myths, and one was about the music of Mozart, photographic memory, and then the third one was how games keep the brain young. Some of these things seem to me kind of like, maybe it could work, or I've heard it before. I've heard that Mozart can increase intelligence, but it was interesting to hear that there's actually no research backing that up. I do like to use a little music in the background during tests just to calm nerves. I like a little classical music, but that's me. Photographic memory, he even talked about photographic memory, Carrie talked about photographic memory too, and he also kind of debunked the myth along with this Braincraft site, and that it's not about having a photographic memory, it's about how their memories are organized in the brain. So that kind of debunks that you're actually taking a photographic memory. The YouTube video also talks about that it's not possible for the brain to see things the exact same way that it was observed. So you're getting something different. And then I talked about how they did some testing on elderly people and gave them games to play. One group played crosswords and chess and games like that to see how it improved memory, and another group did learning absolutely new skills like oh my gosh, it's photography, and the other one was making quilts, and that did show that it helped. Over 3 months' time, it helped make connections. Super important to me. I really jumped onto that one because my dad died of Alzheimer's, and I try very hard to keep my brain moving and learning new things as often as I can, because I've often thought that might, help me dodge it someday. The last piece that I had this week was reading an article called Neuroscience for Educators. What are they seeing and what are they finding? I hadn't really heard a lot about neuroscience so much. I know that I was told that about the different learning types, and reading this article kind of wipe that off the map. They talk about how that's not a real thing, and that the kinesthetic and the auditory, and so I was a little scared at first. I'm like, oh, but that's something I learned about. I know I learned about that when I was getting my bachelor's degree, and that there's no real research to back that up. So the study wanted to look at how educators are using this information that they're getting. And I found it to be really interesting and terribly helpful, because where I was a little disappointed when I started reading it, it led me to see a little bit that's really more important. And I think that is just keeping ourselves educated about what is going on, and the attempts to learn and the attempts to implement some of these techniques into our classroom is really beneficial, even if it's not, even if there isn't full information connecting this to make changes that are, just going to all of a sudden open up all the doors and make all our students learn. The people that were studied, the teachers that were studied in this research, really came out with the main benefit that looking into neuroscience for them is giving them is that they feel stronger about what they're doing, they're understanding their students better, they are really feeling a connectedness in what they're doing, they're not getting burned out because they feel like they are live active learners, which is basically to me exactly what we want our students to grow up to be, are people who always continue learning and want to learn. So I feel like that even though the research isn't 100% fully supporting neuroscience as the connecting link and the be-all and end-all to bring it all together for teaching, it does give us pieces to look into ourselves and to adapt as teachers and make better learning environments and help our students and understand our students in a lot better way, because they're growing and they're kids and their minds are not complete and they are not really, they're not all they're going to be in the time that we're going to see them in kindergarten through 12th grade. And we have to have a little bit of understanding about how it works in order to better help them. Thanks.